Disney's latest live-action adaptation of a classic animated feature drops this Friday. That's Moana. But you wouldn't even know it by looking at the Hollywood trades because their attention seems to be completely focused elsewhere. And that's a real problem with a $200 million production budget and probably another $100 million in marketing, because as of right now, it looks like this latest entry from Disney is going to suffer at the box office badly. Renegade Online. All right, let's dive on into this one, kids, because take a look at what's on the screen right now, and it should tell you a good idea of what we expect from Moana, considering the recent history. Remember, just a few years ago, the original Moana animated movie became a big hit all of a sudden all over again on Disney+. It actually was the second place screening on Disney+ behind Bluey for the entire year, I think 2023. And it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, to the point where Disney, under Bob Iger at the time, decided that the second entry of Moana, Moana 2, was going to be shifted from being a Disney Plus television show to a full theatrical release. That turned out to be an excellent business move. It cost more than they originally intended, but they got it back in spades at the box office. You can see here Moana 2's opening weekend, which opened on the Thanksgiving frame, grosses $389 million in its global opening. Highest global box office debut for an animated movie. Of course, this doesn't include any type of inflationary adjustment. Now, while that was going on, a live-action adaptation of the original Moana, now almost 8 years old, started getting greenlit and put into pre-production and principal photography. And they brought in Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to play the character of Maui, which he had voiced in the original animated piece. And there was a number of pieces of concern out there because, of course, this movie was going to cost even more than Moana 2 did, and Disney had not recently had a lot of big success with live-action adaptations. Of course, this was coming around the time when we were coming off of things like The Little Mermaid. We had Snow White coming up, which also turned out to be a big disaster. But Moana certainly was always a big hit with the target audience. So what was going to happen now with the live-action adaptation? Well, in 2025, we got another hint. A live-action adaptation, sort of a live-action adaptation, came out with Lilo and Stitch. Of course, the titular character was still animated by computer, not live action, but there were live action elements, of course, throughout most of the film. But Lilo and Stitch opened to a massive $341 million global opening over the Memorial Day weekend frame. Certainly that had to give Disney a lot of confidence coming into something like Moana that had already had much more recent success than Lilo and Stitch, which was following up an original animated title from many, many years prior. But no. Disney's live-action Moana looks to welcome a $130 million global opening coming this weekend. This is July 7th from Anthony D'Alessandro at Deadline Magazine. So yeah, we went from about $360 million down to $130 million. Yeah, what happened to the other roughly two-thirds of the audience? Where is this other two-thirds of the audience that was just there not even 2 years ago to go see the animated version of Moana 2? They're not back for this one. Disney is hoping that moviegoers come to the water no matter how hard the studio tries with the live-action version of its hit 2016 animated film Moana, which is looking to hang 10 again at the box office with a global start of $130 million, domestically in the $60 million range. Ooh. Yikes.
I'm sure that's going to be okay. I'm sorry.
The question about all of this is whether it's too much Moana too soon, just like there was too much Super too soon, meaning Supergirl being a year after Superman. Yeah, that's what did it. Sure, let's go with that. The live-action version of Moana was greenlit before Disney CEO Bob Iger decided to flip the Moana Disney Plus series into a feature-animated sequel, Moana 2, which literally played theaters 19 months ago. It opened to a massive Thanksgiving 5-day North American record of $225 million, a true $139 million 3-day, and a Toon record $389 million global, legging out to $460 million US and over $1 billion worldwide. Again, three times is what we got a year and a half ago compared to what we are expected to get this weekend for the live action of Moana. How does this happen? Something else to potentially consider this weekend is that we're in a bit of a funk at the summer box office after the lackluster openings for Warner Brothers' Supergirl and Illumination's Minions and Monsters. But to peg that to product no one was begging for. Still, there doesn't seem to be anything to worry about. Universal's The Odyssey and Sony Marvel Studios' Spider-Man Brand New Day are expected to clean up. So you'll have to pardon me for thinking that the HollyWood Access Media not only has been ignoring Moana, but they've also seemed to already swept this one under the rug and written it off. And on that note, look at all the attention being paid this week by that very same HollyWood Access Media, not to the Walt Disney Company that has been glazing their donuts for decades over there. No. Now the focus turns to Christopher Nolan, Universal Studios, and The Odyssey, which doesn't come out until the following weekend after Moana. But thanks to Christopher Nolan and Universal lifting an embargo on this movie, they've managed to steal any thunder, potentially, that Moana could have possibly had this week to really ramp up its marketing. Make no mistake, the Walt Disney Company is spending a small fortune right now trying to market Moana, but they might as well just be flushing those dollars right down the nearest toilet at the Magic Kingdom. Disney seems to have no frets, as the original Moana is one of the studio's most popular movies with 1.5 billion hours consumed, annually ranking among Disney's top 10 films on Disney Plus since they launched the service in 2019. The question is whether the live-action take of the ancient Polynesian set story can blow like a volcano at the box office, with families lining up beyond what the horizon is showing. Tracking has Moana with a $75 million North American start, but advanced ticket sales, which are around $4 million, point to a $60 million plus opening. Now remember, kids, when it comes to kids' movies and family movies, pre-sales do not look like what you would see for, say, Spider-Man or even The Odyssey or anything else of a superhero or big IP genre. Think Star Wars earlier this year. Those things tend to be more heavily front-loaded, and the fandom shows up early to buy their tickets. Family fare tends to be overwhelmingly walk-up traffic, which is why when you see a figure like $4 million for Moana, you don't get to really compare that to, say, Spider-Man No Way Home or Spider-Man Brand New Day or Spider-Man who knows what it's called this year. The deal is that they need the walk-up traffic, but right now you have to ask, where is that walk-up traffic going to go? Toy Story 5 is still doing extremely well at the box office. Another major Disney production that cost $250 million to produce alone before they spent a dime to market the thing. Then you've got Minions and Monsters, which, even though it's underperforming the hopes of Universal, it's still going to turn a pretty profit at the box office, not to mention all the ancillary merchandise sales it gets. And yes, a big fat check from Netflix at the end of the day, because after it leaves Peacock after the first few months, it's going to wind up over there on the big N. Moana just seems to be buried amongst all of the kerfuffle going on in the box office right now, which there's no reason it should be. This is a major multi-$100 million massive production from the Walt Disney Company that all totaled between production and marketing, they probably have over $300 million sunk into this thing. It's going to need at least $600 million at the box office to break even, because there's really nowhere else for this thing to go after it leaves the box office, except for Disney Plus, where Disney pays itself for its own product. They're not collecting a check from a third party like Apple or Amazon or Netflix for any of it. Is there really room for 3 major family pictures all at the same time? I'm sort of doubting it, and I've been very skeptical as to the box office veracity and its ability to perform for quite some time. Looking at the schedule months ago, Moana was the one on our list that said, gonna scratch my head on this one. It's another live-action adaptation that I think the kids didn't really ask for. Animation is something that gets it with kids, and kids get it with animation. It is a different dynamic altogether when you then gravitate towards a live-action adaptation. But Valiant, what about things that they've done in the past? What about Aladdin? What about Beauty and the Beast? So glad you asked. The biggest difference with those films is that it had something for the older kids and even the young adults and the adults as well. And those are strong, very familiar romance stories. Something that really doesn't exist in Moana. It's not built for that. You see, when you've got Beauty and the Beast and you've got Aladdin out there and you can put a boy and a girl together and have a classical romance, the ladies are going to show up, especially if it's live action in that case, which it worked very, very well, especially for Beauty and the Beast, doing over $1.5 or $1.6 billion, and that was almost 10 years ago now, if I'm not mistaken. If you consider a $130 million global opening for Moana and generously stretch it out to about a 3x, that means this movie is still not even going to cross over $500 million, and that's going to be a real big problem for Disney. They'd better think about things going forward because as of right now, all the intentions on Chris Nolan and the Odyssey, and maybe Disney just wants to have this thing forgotten. But hey, Josh D'Amaro, how you feeling right now with all the leftover turds from Bob Iger right in your sandbox as he's walking out the door? Good luck. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.